Caitlin's, or Kayla, she's coming. We're just wrapping up a few more things.
How are you?
I'm good.
Amy, I haven't met you in person yet. It's nice to meet you.
You too.
I haven't seen Jamila in person for a
I know.
long time. Yeah, how are you?
Good. Well, it seems like I haven't seen you in a while since.
I know.
So
we did
on
some
these
meetings this month.
iPads, they have saved,
Hi.
go back
Are
and
you with?
I'm
go
with
to
Rachel
all the
Karen.
different boards
Yes,
that
I do.
shares.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Any board that each individual is on, they're assigned to them, so
And then I
they
got
can
hot
log
dogs.
in from home and get access to your documents
Good.
as well. So
Oh,
like for
nice.
tonight, boarding, zoning appeals,
Oh,
then we've got our main meeting, and then these are documents.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a matter for discussion tonight, and then just some meeting minutes from the last meeting, and then
Gotcha.
the agenda, stuff like that.
Okay.
So-
Oh, there.
Oh, and then it
Pulled
was,
down to refresh.
so like she's got her presentation
They're
on
separate
here
from
as
tonight's
well, so they can go through this, you know, throughout the evening.
Yeah.
Have these documents in front of them.
Is that something that, I know, I keep hearing in the meetings, they need to be signed, they need to be signed, but who's supposed to sign it? Everybody, the whole board?
Presiding officer.
And I have not had time to get to this once again, so
Oh,
I'm
okay.
hoping that we'll get to them here in the next month.
So anybody's able to sign it?
It should be the presiding officer that was present at the meeting. Well, then her successor can sign. Sure, yep. And during the emergency, I think we'd get by an electronic signature, but the emergency is no more as of last week, according to our governor.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So our open door law applies again.
But is the signature here preventing people from going forward and doing what they need to do?
Shouldn't be.
No, it's generally just the mailed finding of fact that is important, but we've got a few there that have lingered on and it's not pulling anybody up. So, yeah, we'll
But the property owner should want that in case 10 years from now, there was ever an attack on it, they could wave that around, here's the one that was signed.
And I noticed one of our projects that we approved, there is, I really haven't seen much activity there, and I wonder if they're not waiting for this, you know?
Well, they would let someone know.
Yeah,
Yeah. Somebody will wait.
yeah, that's what I was wondering, what's the sign?
Jeff, did you see the stuff on RDC, that legislation put out? It's kind of like governing like rules of how often one can attend virtually.
Yes,
Yeah, and
yes.
all that
Yep.
policy, so we're gonna need to create like a policy or
Yes,
something on that?
yeah, Chad and I have already talked about
I
that.
thought, that was interesting.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's for RDC. That's the only one board I've seen it apply to, but, it was like no more than half, you can't do 2 months in a row being virtual, you have to have so many members attending, in person. I wasn't expecting that this soon, just cause things haven't gotten back
well,
completely.
especially it seems that older people Not this group, of
Sure,
course, but
yes,
older people
yes.
tend to appear on those and they're more vulnerable.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Yeah, that you can, in public hearings are not permitted at all. You have to be there in person. to
Yes,
count.
yeah.
But an emergency would trump that.
Yes.
And, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And policy would be built to state
Yes,
such.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm out of the loop on that one.
I just saw that.
And it was effective immediately. Normally they give you till
A
July
little
1st.
bit more time to get your, yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
More stuff. I've been too busy reading my final, just changes with the legislative session this year, you know, getting caught up.
Yeah,
Went through what then,
yeah.
I did prepare them
Wow.
2 months ago, I just forgot about it.
You're on it.
All right, we do have findings of fact to sign, so. If we can. Okay. All right. I think we're- Jamila, are you the
Yeah, yes,
president?
Call to order. Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, May 18th, 2021. Do you call to order?
Oh, yes. Okay, I'll go down the roll. Curdy McCrocklin. Do you have anybody in chat here who's? Let me just double check and make sure we don't have any attendance. We're supposed to be panelists. Nope, does not appear so. Alright, so Kirby is absent. Sorry, I'm trying to minimize this. Okay. Jamila Zafar.
Present.
Kyle Eichhorn is absent, but I heard he might be joining us later. Jenny Sisson. Here. Amy Parker.
Here.
Alright, so we have a quorum.
Okay. I want to look over the minutes from the previous meeting and, want you to approve them. Has everyone had a chance to look over the minutes?
I have, and I called to approve these.
Okay, is there a second?
I have a second.
Next.
Yeah, roll.
Oh, roll call. I call roll call? Okay.
Or I can. Kayla, you want me to?
Oh,
Take-
if you could,
Okay.
please.
Take a roll call on approval of the March 16th meeting minutes. Jenny Sisson,
Approve.
Jamila Safar,
Approve.
and Amy Parker.
Approve.
Motion carried.
Now on to old business.
So we do have some findings of fact that are ready to be signed, so, Jeff, these first two are from 2020, for the lumberyard site and the PNC Bank. So is it all right if I go ahead and have the members here present tonight sign those if they're
Yes.
okay with that?
Mhm.
Kayla, the
Yes.
audience is asking us to talk louder.
Oh,
We're
okay.
a little soft tonight, so, okay.
No motion is necessary. It's already been approved.
Awesome, thank you. And the signature page is on the second. And then, I've actually brought the folder up.
Which one should I sign? Vice chair or?
She signed as vice chair.
Vice chair, yes.
Her present position.
I always
Yep.
vice chair,
Mhm.
yes. Can they or just sign?
You can just sign, and, if you could, I can attest and date it, so that's fine. And then, there's another copy of it.
High Street?
This is the same one, yeah, High Street. And just so you guys remember, this was the conditional use for the old lumber yard, to have more businesses in it. It is still ongoing. Oh, I guess you guys have to sign it too. I'm still wearing my mask today because I had a little something going on. I don't know what it was not COVID, but I don't wanna pass anything on to you guys, so. Seems pretty good at keeping the flu at bay as well, or whatever's going on.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and can we move on to 228 South Pendleton Avenue conditional use, findings of fact? This was the same thing. This was just to allow more than 4 businesses in the old PNC Bank. And the interior of that building has changed over quite nicely. It's a co-working space, more or less. So it's got like a central break room and printer space for a variety of small businesses to share amenities.
Thank you.
Next up is 525 East State Street. This was for Swackhamer Masonry. A conditional use was required for a contractor business. They've been hard at work getting the masonry shored up on that building. Last one is Mr. Jones' pole barn variance. Unfortunately, I believe Mr. Jones has actually passed away, just a couple months after we issued this. So, go through with the procedure and finding the facts.
This is the one where we were talking about matching the house.
That was, yeah, this was one we discussed in November.
Yeah, is the family still in there?
Yes.
So it would still be.
Yep, still
valid.
applies. Mhm. All right, thank you. All right, we are almost all caught up to date on findings of fact now.
Huge accomplishment. It's been see how productive we are. Okay, so let's move on to item 5, new business. 201 East State Street. Paul St. Pierre. This is, could you tell us about it, Paul?
Yes, this is a variance for a lot smaller than allowed by the ordinance in the downtown business design district. I've got some documents here, and I guess I should probably go ahead and share our screen so the audience can see. see here. Oh, Denise, can you share the screen? Do you have the drive pulled up or
I
do you
can.
have it?
Well, I don't have it from here, but I
Okay.
can.
That's okay, let me just pull up the. Oh, is it on your screen already? Okay.
They're asking us for us to speak louder. Judge Gisberry.
You better do what he says.
We better see what he says.
All right, here we go. See. All right, so this is, oh, sorry, I'm still not sharing the screen. Okay, here we go. So this is this is a variance by Paul St. Pierre, Wilson St. Pierre Mortuary, a funeral home. Let me speed up a little bit here. Here we go.
These microphones on.
I think they are, I hear feedback.
And Rachel, what's your last name?
Shuttle.
Rachel Shettle of, KRM. Is here tonight representing this petition, for the architect. So, I'm just gonna skip past the application part that is available to you to view. And explain to you as we're looking at an image here. Do you all know where the funeral home is located? Okay, on the 200 block here of East State Street.
Yes.
And there's a small yellow house located on the
Yes.
corner. Okay.
Where Wood Realty used to be years ago.
So this would be a variance to allow a smaller lot than allowed. So if a variance was granted, then we would go on to the subdivision process from there. Rachel, do you wanna kind of present anything for the petition tonight, or are you just here to answer questions?
I'm mostly here to answer questions.
Okay, all right. Well, let me know if I'm getting anything wrong.
No, that's all correct.
So, I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys a couple of these exhibits if you wanna think of them first. There's one that's that around. So the funeral home occupies lots 1, 2, and 3 of the block between Caroline Street and Broadway on the north side of State Street. And has occupied that area for several, probably decades. And they've got a proposed parking lot improvement as part of this round of upgrades, but first they would like to separate off and sell the yellow house to another business. You can see here how they would like to split this lot off. Proposed part of lot 1 is what they're asking the variance for, with a small, like 3-foot sliver on the right side. Though from what I was seeing in the surveyor's notes, there was kind of a plus or minus 3 feet in where you thought that corner might be. So, do you know the reason for that little sliver?
For the sliver, I do not know the reason for that, I'm sorry.
So I'm wondering if that's not just kind of an error enclosure. So 9,000 square feet would be the minimum allowed by our ordinance for a commercial use in the downtown business area. $7,200 if it were a residential use. I included one photo of the site here. It is located on the corner of State and Broadway, so that Broadway side does have quite a bit of unimproved right-of-way. It's a 66-foot wide right-of-way, so a good portion of that is actually in grass. I believe the property line is actually about where that little pink flag is in the photo. I couldn't see a property corner down there, but if I had to guess, that's why it was in the ground there. I know there are plans to demolish a garage that is currently on the site, which does appear to be encroaching over the lot line between lots 1 and 2. You can see how the proposed parking lot would come up to the required 10-foot setback off of the yellow house. And the exhibit that I put up on the desk for you guys to look at, as well as this image, shows the required 9,000-foot lot size, the existing 12,000 square foot lot 1, as well as the proposed 5,000 square foot lot that the variance is being requested for. You can see those 3 lines and how they look. And for those of you in the audience, and also for new board members, I've included the basic definition of a variance and when a variance may be issued according to our ordinance. It's supposed to basically give a minimum level of relief to lots that would otherwise experience hardships that were not intended by our ordinance. It's not supposed to be, if you go to the next page, I've actually copied out the 9 standards that variances are supposed to meet in their findings of fact, that they're, you can read through these, the reasons we have in our local ordinance for a variance. I guess, as a staff person, I need to basically recognize the negatives that this variance could cause as well. And one that does get me in our findings here is number 4, not self-created. Basically, this would create a non-conforming lot that is less than the 9,000 square feet, and also a lot that may not have enough room for parking. So I could, in the future, foresee somebody coming to this board and asking for variances from other provisions because of the small lot size. Jeff, am I off track on that at all?
No, you're correct.
So that is something to consider. However, I also understand the funeral homes wanting to control their entire parking lot. So, let's see. I do wonder if number 8 would be resolved rather than from a variance in lot size, rather by a variance cross-access agreement, or an access easement that would allow shared use of the parking lot while retaining the minimum lot size. But anyway, those are my concerns. I know parking requirements are less and less as we go on in time, especially for the downtown business district where there is a good deal of public parking. So that has been less of an issue. I've seen on this plan they're also recommending some street parking. However, I do wonder if that's not too close to the intersection. So there are some other options there, but anyway, I think that we could quite likely, well, I do wonder if there's not a modification to the request that could be made that would be more in line with our ordinance. Rachel, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, it's,
You-
ready to,
Yeah, please.
I believe the, owner of Funeral Home has a purchaser in mind for this property, and their business would fit within the requested lot size and parking amount. I can talk to the funeral home director and see if they would be open to, you know, cross-access agreement for that full lot size. I believe you shared the plan earlier that shows the line of the full 9,000 square feet. You can see it encroaches quite a bit into their existing parking lot. It's really the goal of the project would be to, you know, section this off, sell the property to, you know, business that would then be able to occupy that and maintain the building and improve the appearance and create a more functional and aesthetically appealing parking lot for the funeral home. Kind of that mutual benefit.
Now currently, and actually I probably need to go to the photographs section of this, like we see the proposed site plan for the parking lot on the plans. I'm gonna scroll through here so get around to the back side of the yellow house right now. Okay, currently it has its own parking area. Is there a reason that they're not wanting to just kind of include that parking area, and keep it on its own with the house?
So I believe the garage is actually on the funeral home lot, so that parking, is allowed, you know, it's kind of already an informal agreement. Because if I'm correct, I believe the parking for the house is already on lots owned by the funeral home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the garage there is definitely kind of built right over the line. But it looks like in the plans, they're wanting to kind of demolish this parking area and combine it in with the rest of the parking lot.
Correct.
I guess that's what I was wondering, is there a specific reason they don't wanna sell that kind of as is? Do they want to gain more parking?
I believe it's already, I mean, the property is owned by the funeral home, so that parking is utilized, you know, during services at the funeral home. So by including that in this lot with the yellow house property, they would actually be sacrificing parking.
Go to the,
And the demolition of the garage, as a business, it's not needed for that property, and it helps ease kind of the ambiguity of which property it's actually sitting on.
here we go.
So this garage was built on, or at one point was this garage on the original lot of the home? Or was it always encroaching?
We've not gone back far enough to know. I don't wanna speculate on which property it was
Because that
actually
part
built
was
on.
a little confusing.
Yeah.
And looking at it.
I know that the funeral home became a funeral home very early in the 20th century. We had to go over its history a little bit with Historic Preservation Commission. And so I'd say by the 1920s or 30s, it was already transitioned from a single-family home to a funeral home. But then obviously, if you look at it, you can kind of see 1950s and 60s add-ons in the drive-through as automobiles became more popular with transporting people in funerals. And I think there was at least one replat over the years, which might be why we have a few feet of plus or minus on this. But yeah, so you can kind of see here where the 9,000 feet would be, which is kind of at the back of that second row of proposed parking, or midway through it. And then you can see where the existing concrete is and that existing cut into that parking lot.
these new offset, or, yeah, off-street parking spaces, there's 3. Of course, it's not guaranteed if the measurements work with other existing conditions, am I correct? These 3 off-street parking spaces that are proposed?
That's correct.
So that's not a guarantee because we have to look at other conditions. So that's not a guarantee to this. Even if it were to happen, because it's off-street parking, it's still not a guarantee for that building, correct? Because it's public access.
Is that?
Yes, that's correct.
So then, I just wanna be clear on the decisions when we're thinking through this. My other thought here is the existing property line, is it encroaching the actual structure or is it right on the structure?
It is right on the edge of the structure. I've actually got another survey right here that states that it is not quite 1 foot away from, that point of the house.
Okay.
So they
And-
have done a survey to make sure that they're okay with the setbacks.
And is there any written language as to, when improvements are being done on this dwelling, that, like there's easement space in between the 2, even though it's on the other property owners, if they need to get ladders in to have contractors come in, is there any written language that would allow an agreeable relationship there? I'm thinking of in the future, if St. Pierre doesn't own St. Pierre any longer, and I just don't want future property owners to be in a fine with that. So that's also something to think about there. Is there anything historic with tearing down that garage that we should be concerned with?
No, I would say not, since it's, I would run it through the HPC, and I think, did we already do that?
I think we talked about rebuilding a garage that was actually within the proposed property lines, and then that was gonna trigger a historic preservation, or, historic, character review.
But tearing down does not?
It would require the HPC to review it. I can't approve that as staff. However, I don't foresee there being a problem with tearing down that garage in particular, because it is encroaching and it's not particularly, significant to the downtown historic district.
Okay. So, taking the off-street parking out of the thought process, because that's not necessarily a guarantee, there is no, specific then parking for this structure. So, we can assume that they would be using, downtown parking locations if they work in this building, wherever they choose, unless there's that agreement.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Correct.
Okay. I don't know what types of businesses, but could there be some designated spaces, at least for some of the staff? I'm thinking of, even though there's a potential buyer in mind, that business might not survive, and so I'm thinking of the next business. Or is this gonna be an attractive property to bring in, or are we making decisions that cut out future, purchasers? And then we have this building that's sitting there that, there's not much to do, or changes regarding parking. So I just wanna make sure that we've vetted all that.
You mentioned a potential buyer. Do you know what kind of business it would be?
I'm sorry, I actually do not know, what type of business it would be. Is there a target of, you mentioned designated for staff, would there be a target number that you would like to see for, and it's not a large building, I don't know the square footage
Yeah.
off the top of my head, but that itself kind of limits the business type that can.
I would defer to Kayla as far as, I always like to look what we have in place. Do we have anything similar that we can compare that to?
Well, at this point, I have not looked up the parking requirements. I would say that's where it makes me a little nervous not to have any off-street parking spaces for this lot, and also because it could be potentially built up to the property lines on that corner. If, say, the next, person who comes in wants to build a, we'll say it like something maybe of the scale of the fire station, where it's built right up to the property corner. That could happen on this lot because it is zoned downtown business. And if that happens, and they want to kind of create that downtown block feel, it would be nice to know there was room for parking in the back, or at least more space back there where they could expand. Or if nothing else, at least a cross-access agreement to know that some parking was designated for this site.
That's a potential condition that this board can place on any approval.
Does anyone have any more questions?
I don't.
Do you have an official recommendation? Just that you prefer that there are some modifications?
My staff recommendation, and I mean, I very much like everyone involved with this, but from a staff perspective and being very professional about it, I definitely see room for a modification. That 9,000 square feet, if the variance was instead, well, I don't even know if there would need to be a variance for anything else. If we could put a property line, say at that second row of parking, and just do continuous parking anyway with a cross-access agreement over the entire thing. I don't know why we couldn't do that, except for the owner wanting to sell, wanting to have full control over the entire parking lot, and perhaps the potential purchaser wanting to keep, price tipped down to a minimum.
Yeah, and Kayla's hinted on this earlier, that the issue is the strict application of the zoning ordinance creating a practical difficulty. I think the board would have to look really tough, or really hard at that to make that finding in a positive way. Because as Kayla just pointed out, you can't create your own problem and say, okay, now I need help. And it's not a problem, is in quotes here, selling it to another company and making money is not a problem, and no one here is against that. But we also are guardians of the code of these ordinances, and it would be difficult for this board to defend a situation in which a property owner is wanting to get a variant from something in a situation they did create themselves or potentially created. So if a solution could be reached, maybe perhaps the best action, I'm just throwing this out there, would be to table it tonight to see if the owners could work out a solution by which a variance would not be needed. If that's all that can be done, and then that can be proven that that's the only way we can solve this problem, maybe Kayla and the board could put their heads together and figure out some findings that work. But as this is presented today, I don't know how you approve and make a good finding under 3. I really don't.
I don't wanna do anything that down the line is gonna set a precedence and cause some issues.
There's always have to be conservative too. And you're not really allowed to consider this, but practically speaking, this is not even close to 9,000. It's not like it's 8,500 or 8,750.
Yeah.
And technically, that shouldn't matter, but we all know it does. I won't say that around planners, they get mad, but.
Okay.
Okay, so,
We put this on the agenda next month, and in that time, maybe we could work, see if there is a possible solution. If there's absolutely not, we revisit it, but right now, we've got some issues in my opinion.
so make a motion for, the presenter to go back to the owners and see if they can make some modifications and resubmit to the BZA.
It'd be the same submission. We're just tabling to gather more information from her and her client, so we can reconsider it.
Then I make a motion to table.
Okay, do you have a second?
I second.
Or do you need a vote on it too?
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
All right, Jamila Zafar,
Approve.
Jenny Sisson,
I approve.
Amy Parker.
Approve.
Thank you. All right, so we will see you next month, and we'll talk in the meantime.
Yeah, we'll get something set up.
Is there any other business that's not on the agenda? Anybody else have anything? Okay, meeting